for the most part, everyone can eat it, which is really cool because these days, especially in Southern California, there's a lot of people that either have food sensitivities, allergies, or just like don't want to eat certain things for certain reasons. So we like to say it's bread for everybody.
On Connecting the Dots, we aim to redefine what the term healthy means by learning from experts, identifying different areas of our life that impact our well-being, and becoming our greatest health advocates.
We believe that by making small lifestyle changes, people can not only manage, but also prevent a wide range of chronic illnesses we are taught to believe are normal in our society today.
My name's Kathleen Carney. I'm a nutritionist, foodie, author, and creator and co-host of this raw, real, and sometimes ridiculous show.
And I'm Melissa Chamis, the other half of Connecting the Dots. I'm also a certified yoga instructor, Reiki 1 practitioner, and a hustler just trying to survive in corporate America.
We are close friends who bonded over our messy healing journeys and are eager to share our experiences with you.
So come join this journey with us as we all learn to connect the dots between the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of being human.
We now know that 80% of the reason why people go to the doctor's office is because of stress. It's a stress-induced illness.
So if we want to be working on healing the body, the gut and the brain have to be worked on together.
People get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Never accept that, oh, I'm just always going to be this way, because there's always something you can do about it.
So make one lifestyle choice after another and do it with support.
The future of health looks like prevention.
It's going to be more common for everybody to have their own customized health plan.
Our health is no different than the health of the planet.
It's never too late to feel great.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Connecting the Dots. We are so happy to have you here. This week, we learned a ton from our guests about how we can support small businesses and the planet, which is why we decided to have this episode come out right after Earth Day, which was on Saturday. When Adam and Maddie's marketing coordinator, Grace, reached out to us about having them on the show, we were immediately interested. At the time, I was completely gluten-free, and I think Melissa was also gluten-free. And so we were really excited to learn more about a bread that we could eat, but we had no idea how much more we would end up learning from our incredible guests.
Yeah, so as partners in life and business, Adam Hiner and Maddie Hamann started brands Live PACHA and Boochcraft from the ground up on a mission to revolutionize healthy food and beverage products. Boochcraft, an organic hard kombucha label, has taken off in the beverage industry, and Live PACHA, a gluten-free, vegan, paleo, and certified organic bread company, is the couple's latest business venture, which we chat about most in this episode. Adam and Maddie bring an ethical, entrepreneurial approach to the table as they prioritize environmental protection through Boochcraft and Live PACHA's 1% for the Planet pledge, meaning that 1% of all business sales are donated to environmental conservation and restoration efforts. Furthermore, their businesses emphasize sustainable product packaging and responsible procurement strategies. And as Kath mentioned, we were both gluten-free when we were interviewing the guests. I've been gluten-free for over a year now. And what I love about Live PACHA and their products is that they are allergen-free too. So if you've been listening, you know I am allergic to life, but mainly nuts. So anything gluten-free is mostly nut-based by like almond flour or something like that I'm usually allergic to. And the great thing about PACHA bread is that it's not nut-based, it's seed-based, and it's free from like all the top allergens. So it's really bread for everybody, as we say in the intro sound bit. So highly recommend trying it out.
Yeah, it's really cool that they use buckwheat, which you'll hear about in the episode and why they chose it and the benefits that it has. It's really cool. So won't spoil that too much. But the one thing that I really wanted to highlight in the intro, and we will dive a lot deeper into it in this episode. That really made a huge impact on me was learning more about the importance of composting. This is something prior to the interview with Adam and Maddie that I had only seen my parents and some of my family in California do. And I never really understood what the benefits were of, putting your scraps of fruits and vegetables in a little bucket. That's kind of all that I had seen and really understood. But after talking to Adam and Maddie about the importance of composting, I was really inspired to take action. So I ended up asking for the Lomi composter for Christmas, and can confidently say that Luke and I are both obsessed with it. It has reduced like the amount of waste that we produce by a lot. It's prevented any nasty smells coming from our garbage can if we don't take it out within a day or two. And of course, it has, reduced the amount of organic waste that we are sending to landfills, which is in a very, very small way helping to reduce greenhouse gases. So when I was preparing for the intro, I looked on their website and actually saw that they're running a special for Earth Day. I'm not sure how long it will last or if it will even be over by the time we put the episode out, but I figured I would put it out there if after listening to this episode, you too are inspired to start composting. You might be able to do it for a little bit cheaper. Unfortunately, though, we're not affiliated with them. So I'm not plugging this brand for any reason except for the fact that I really like it. But I highly recommend you look into getting one or starting a compost pile in your yard if you have one, or joining a community compost pile. I think that they're starting to get more and more popular, especially out on the West Coast. So that's kind of my PSA for this episode.
That's good to know that they're on sale. Maybe I will look into investing in one. But yeah, that's what I loved about Adam and Maddie, because I felt like as someone who doesn't know as much as they probably should about things that will help the environment, I felt like they explained things in very easy way, but like kind of gave tangible approaches to it. So like explaining the benefits of composting, like really understanding the why, because you hear about composting, but it's like, why and how does it actually help the planet? And like they talk about regenerative agriculture and like bee pollination and all these different things that are much more than just bread. So you will definitely learn a lot in this episode, a lot more than you think. But we don't want to spoil too much, so we'll get into our ads. So our first partner is, if you look at that, PACHA bread. So Adam and Maddie were nice enough to give us a discount code for our listeners. So if you're interested in purchasing PACHA bread, use the code Connecting the Dots and click the link in our show notes to get 20% off at checkout.
I'm always looking for products to recommend to my clients like PACHA. At Kathleen Carney Wellness, I take an integrative and holistic approach to health and wellness, using the best of what I learned in graduate school from my supervisors and the alternative health practices I've studied along the way. I treat every client as an individual and create customized health plans to help them work towards their health goals. You can book a free discovery call with me by going to www.kathleencarney.com/services. We hope you enjoy the episode and start composting. Well, thank you so much, Adam and Maddie, for being on Connecting the Dots today. We're so excited to learn more about both of you and the business that you've created together. But before we jump in, we like to start our episodes off with an icebreaker. So would like to hear from both of you. Maybe Maddie, you go first. What is something that you're currently reading, watching, or listening to?
I think I know what Adam's gonna say, so I'll let him say it because we listen to a lot of the same things. But lately I've been reading a book called The First 40 Days, which is all about postpartum nutrition, and it's a really, really beautiful book that has wonderful illustrations and recipes, but it's kind of like a modern take on the traditional, like what they would call confinement periods that people usually take when they are going to have a baby. In other cultures, in Western culture, it tends to be like, how fast can mom get back on her feet?
Mm-hmm.
It's not how it is in other other cultures. So I've been reading that and taking that in, and yeah, getting excited for a big shift in our lives.
So exciting. And I have 2 really close friends that are due very soon too. So I'm going to pass that along to them.
Yeah.
Adam, how about you?
I have lately been listening to this guy, Morley Robbins. He has kind of a whole protocol called the Root Cause Protocol. Just a quick background, he was like a health, he was working for all the big hospital conglomerates like for his whole career and predicting what diseases were going to be coming down the path 20 years from now. And actually, this, he's 20 years ago, he was predicting a lot of people were going to be sick today. And then he was finding that the hospitals were like, okay, cool. Like, we don't want to find the root and like fix it. We just want to know which doctors we need for, to be prepared for that time. And so that led him on the journey of trying to figure out, well, what is the root cause of all this disease that we're seeing? And he is all about mineral balancing as like the root cause and energy production in the mitochondria, efficient in energy production. And it's really cool. He's got a protocol that is really easy to understand and follow. He's all about getting your copper right, which he says a lot of people are deficient in, and everyone has too much iron, even though they think they're deficient because they're anemic, and it's really like an iron dysfunction. So there's all this stuff that we don't really get from doing like a standard blood test, where it's just kind of measuring things like how much of this do you have in this place, how much of this do you have. He's more about like the interactions with the different minerals and where is the mineral living in your body and is there dysfunction, and trying to get it to the right place. And it's really cool. And so I've just been diving into that lately. So
that's fascinating. I actually have been on my own health journey, and the first test that my coach had me do was a hair trace mineral analysis. And similar kind of to what you just said, obviously it showed the levels of minerals currently in my body, but the most important thing she was saying was the ratios of minerals.
Right.
So super cool that you're learning about that. I just learned a ton about that myself, that never really realized that that was a thing. And I'd love to, dive a little bit deeper into, your knowledge of minerals and how things are grown, because as you said, a lot of people are deficient in minerals, and for some of us may know that's because our soils are depleted of minerals. And I know you two are really working hard to help fix that. So would love to dive a little bit deeper into that as the episode goes on.
Yeah, and I definitely am going to check that out because I'm starting to learn more about minerals, but I'm not as in depth as Kath is. So thank you for that suggestion. So I guess before we get into the nitty gritty, could you both kind of tell us a little bit about yourselves and your health journey and how that led you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm from Ohio. So I grew up, just in the Midwest. I don't know, our idea of healthy was like, we eat margarine, not butter. But I I came out to California about 10 years ago for a graduate program in physical oceanography. And I was mostly interested in that because I've just seeing what's happening to the planet, and like thinking, oh, okay, we need to understand climate change better so that we can make a difference and we can make changes that make sense. Yes, kind of then moving out to California was also the beginning of a real a closer look at my own health and wellness. Just being in a different paradigm. Got into yoga, got into just nutrition and organic food, and like, why would you choose to eat organic food over conventionally grown or GMO things? Like in the Midwest, there's so many people that are like, GMO foods are amazing. What do you mean? They're the answer. They're like the solution to all the problems. You're like, oh, maybe not.
Same in Texas.
Yeah. But it's been interesting because honestly, like my journey with science, like I have a PhD, and I don't really intend to use it because I realized that like understanding more about what's happening with the climate isn't actually making any changes. Like we know plenty. We know what things need to happen, and we're simply not doing those things. And then also kind of like through the nutrition and studying and understanding changes that can be made in the food system, I realized like, wow, there's an actual huge opportunity here to shift. Like if we as a society are demanding food that's coming from farms that grow food in not just a sustainable way, not just an organic way, but like a regenerative way with ecosystems in balance and soil being built instead of like all the carbon that's in the soil getting released year after year, more and more. Yeah, we can actually do something. And added benefit, all of our food will be healthier for everyone. There's like, it's a no-brainer. So yeah, that's kind of me.
I love it.
Yeah, so my background's similar to Maddie's. I mean, I came from the East Coast. Didn't understand much about health. I knew I was like already cooking for myself a bit, through college, and then moved to California and just rapidly started discovering things. Like we started shopping at the farmer's market once a week and learning about, local food. And about a year after we moved here, this was back in 2004, my sister started working for a nutritionist, and it was just like, every day she was coming home with like a new thing that we couldn't eat, or like a new thing that we had to eat, or like a new process that we had to like sprout our nuts and like soak them and sprout them and put them in the oven. It was actually pretty hilarious. We had this random roommate, and he would always just be like, the oven's on at 160 degrees. He'd be like texting us like, are you guys wanting to cook your nuts at 160 degrees all day long? Is this on purpose? Like the door of the oven's open. And we're like, yes, don't touch those. We're sprouting our nuts. He's just like, okay, I'm not going to ask. Thanks. So it was pretty hilarious. And we got like really, we went, I think, like beyond, with just like all this stuff. But it was really cool because we were just learning about making organic food and how to be as healthy as possible. And we had some great resources with my sister's job. And then since then, I got really passionate about organic food and organic farming. And right around that time, I started the first organic catering company, 100% organic catering company in Southern California. And it was just like my personal passion for organic food, fed into the business, and that fed back into my personal passion and meeting farmers and sourcing food from farmers, and learning that there wasn't just like a black and white of organic food and, not organic food, that there was organic farmers that were growing everything in huge monocrops and still using all of the organic fertilizers and stuff. And then there was like smaller organic farms that were actually using regenerative practices and building soil health. And so even just understanding that it wasn't just black and white, but it really behooved us to know our farmer and to look at, the practices there. And, all the other things you see at the farmer's market, like pesticide free. And then I learned to ask them the question like, well, what about fertilizer? And they're like, oh, well, we use chemical fertilizers, so there's a reason they're not certified organic. That business was amazing. It led me to start my first restaurant, which then eventually led me into a company called Boochcraft, which is an all organic hard kombucha company, and then eventually to PACHA. And every step of the way, I feel like my personal health journey has like evolved a little bit, and I've had gotten a better understanding of health for myself personally, and that has spilled back into the businesses and kind of the values that we impart into the businesses. So
it's amazing. And I think it's so cool to see your evolution that, from my understanding, stem from just learning more and being curious and being excited about your own health and the health of the planet, which is kind of how Melissa and I have fallen into all of this too. But my burning question is, how did you two meet?
We both, Adam, for much longer than I, have been practicing acro yoga, and we met. I mean, I guess we met through the acro yoga community in San Diego, but specifically we met at an event that was like the regional Burning Man event, where a lot of our acro friends had put together a camp, and I brought art, and Adam was there helping with the builds, and yeah, and we met that weekend, and it was just kind of like, oh, who's this person? I think I like him. I was actually dating someone else at the time, so but one of the things that happened that weekend actually was that he had been making and eating an iteration of PACHA bread, like the very first stages, right? And he brought some of that bread and was like, you have to try this. I can tell you're really gonna like this. And at this point, like I'm already definitely into, like, okay, I eat organic. I'm a little bit picky about what things go into my body, and he brought this bread, and it was just like, whoa, this is delicious. What is this stuff? Yeah, and then we started dating and started making the bread and iterating on it together in our community house, and yeah. So PACHA was involved, actually. Yeah.
That pretty much sums it up. I mean, we can go into more details about that story, but that's the basics.
Oh, I love that. I actually used to teach yoga. I still have never tried acro yoga, but it is on the list. But that event sounds really cool. So since you did mention PACHA, for listeners who aren't familiar with your company, can you talk a little bit about that? And I guess about that whole origin story, how you guys started working together and built the company?
Sure. Yeah, so PACHA is an organic gluten-free bread manufacturing company. We make delicious organic bread, and really it's also grain-free. It's a seed bread. So it's not like most gluten-free breads that you find that are kind of trying to imitate white bread. There's no fillers and binders. Our simple sourdough line has just 4 ingredients: buckwheat, flax, apple cider vinegar, and salt. And then we have a couple others in the 3-seed line that also have sunflower and some spices and herbs. And it's all certified organic, certified gluten-free. And it's really free of like most allergens. We have like a list of all the top allergens on our box that are not in the product. And so it's really like bread. It's like friendly for almost every person in every diet. Like we rarely get someone, every now and again, someone's like, oh, do you have one without flax? And we're like, wow, that's an interesting allergy. Nope, right now they all have flax, but for the most part, everyone can eat it, which is really cool because these days, especially in Southern California, there's a lot of people that either have food sensitivities, allergies, or just like don't want to eat certain things for certain reasons. So we like to say it's bread for everybody. And we started the company together along with a couple other partners that own like basically one of the best organic vegan restaurants in San Diego, the best in San Diego, and we're probably one of the best on the West Coast. And we really just started, like, we had been making it for so long in our house, and with our roommate was also making it and sharing it with friends. And it felt like the energy, like the pent up demand for it was building and people wanted it. And then Trilogy, the restaurant that our business partners own, they needed an organic gluten-free bun for their menu, for their burgers. And they were like getting one shipped out from Hawaii. So it was like all these messages that were saying like, make this bread and sell it. And we came together and just like decided to do it. And basically the first day that we started making bread was the day of the shutdown in the beginning of COVID. So it was, I mean, some people were like, this is crazy timing. Why are you doing this? And I was like, this is perfect timing, because what else are we going to do? Everything's shut down and we can actually like focus on this thing and nurture it. And it was really cool. We had people coming to our house for like a bread pickup. So we were doing like a weekly bread pickup, kind of like a CSA, and they would order their bread and they'd show up at our house. And for some people, it was the only interaction they were having all week because they were like really locked down. So it was kind of cool because we were seeing people in the community that no one else was seeing because they were in isolation. And even that sometimes we get to hug them and be like, hey, you want a hug? They'd be like, well, I haven't hugged anyone in a while. Sure, I'll give you a hug. So it was pretty cool. And it was a really good time to just like, I don't know how else we would have been able to get all of that rolling if we weren't like totally able to focus on it.
Yeah, there wasn't that much else going on. And it also, I mean, my little brother is actually our production manager at our facility. Thomas is his name. And I doubt that he would have given up the like gig worker circus trajectory that he was kind of trying to pursue. But with the shutdown, it was like, okay, well, all your jobs just went away. So he ended up coming and working with us in the kitchen at PACHA when we were first starting out. And, you know, now he's grown with the company, which is really, really awesome to get to work with him.
It's so special, like that PACHA was involved in your meeting and, you know, was a way for you to bring community together and family together. And I'm curious, Adam, how did you learn about PACHA? Is it like a type of bread that's known, or did you make it up?
So it's not really like this particular recipe. It's similar to a Northern European seed bread, but it's not like a straight example of that. It's not like a direct copy of that. I was hanging out with them and they shared the bread with me, and a completely different iteration of the bread, but an iteration of that bread. And I fell in love with it and eventually wrangled the recipe from them. And I was like, I need to make this for myself. And then I started iterating it for years. And when we eventually started the company, one of the couple had split, but one of the two joined with us. She was an investor in the restaurant, the vegan restaurant, so she's involved. And it's just like, it's a really simple recipe that we've even simplified further. We have actually innovation coming down the pipe that is just going to make it really simple and take away more of the ingredients, because we just like, I'm a chef. I come from like a cooking background. And so baking, and we've used to make all of our own bread in the catering kitchen and everything for all of our events in the restaurant. And so to me, I was just like, once I got the recipe in my hands, I was like, oh, cool. We can play with this thing and iterate it and change it. And that's what we've done. And now we just see the need for it to be as simple as possible. Like the less ingredients, the less possible things that people are allergic to, the easier the supply chain. Like during COVID and even the recent year, supply chain has really been tough. So just making it really simple and making it really clean for people is important. And that's what we're working on. So
and I love that.
The first time I tasted this like original rendition of the bread that I tasted was at a spiritual retreat out of Mount Shasta, where we were doing like this meditation retreat, and it was amazing. Like everybody on the retreat was just eating this bread nonstop, and I literally was instantly addicted to it. And I was like, okay, I need to figure this bread out. So that was the beginning.
But we do have, it's really interesting, like talking to customers, people who come from Northern European countries are like, oh my gosh, finally real bread. Like this is what bread is supposed to be like. And like, they're super familiar with this style, where like most American people are like, what should I toast this? It looks like meatloaf. It's like, yes, you should toast it. You should definitely toast it, but it's just real food.
That's so funny. And I personally, I'm allergic to nuts. I have a lot of other food sensitivities and allergies. And when I looked at the ingredients, I was like, wow, finally a bread that's like gluten-free that I'm not allergic to, because usually they are nut-based or have like almond flour or something. So I do appreciate that you are catering to those with food sensitivities. I did read on your website though that you said it was bread without the bloat. Why would you say that? Like,
well, I mean, there's the obvious thing where like many people get bloated when they eat glutinous things in this country, at least. But more than that, we soak and sprout all of our grains. So, well, they're actually seeds, but the process of soaking and sprouting them actually, so like all of the seeds that make up the food that we eat they're produced by plants whose goal is really to procreate. And so these seeds have natural protectors. Lectins and also phytic acid are two of the common ones. They're called anti-nutrients. And one of the reasons is they're there so that the seed theoretically could be eaten and then like not destroyed during the process of digestion. And the phytic acid will actually bind to free minerals in your system. So like you might be eating a magnesium rich food or a copper rich food, but if you have this phytic acid at the same time, that acid is actually pulling the ions of the minerals that your body needs, binding to them and then passing straight through your system. And some of those things tend to cause like indigestion. Things aren't processing the way they're supposed to. So when you soak and sprout your seeds and legumes and nuts and all of that, you break down some of the phytic acid, as well as like shifting the seed into its germination phase, where it's saying, oh, I don't need this protector anymore because I'm in the place that I'm going to be growing. And so you don't have to, your digestive system doesn't have to work with that stuff. So yeah, we soak and sprout, and their bread is like, it feels so good. It feels so good.
Yeah, and then an auxiliary benefit too is that in the germination process, some of the starches are broken down. So then the relative like starch to nutrients and minerals is higher because the minerals are, where they were originally, and the starches are broken down. So you're getting like a more nutrient dense food because some of those starches are broken.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And I know that you had both mentioned, Adam, when you were saying that you were sprouting your own nuts in your kitchen in the early 2000s, and that, Maddie, you've been passionate about, regenerative agriculture and, the benefits of food with climate. And so it's cool that, you both have been able to put your passions together in a bread that's good for everybody, beneficial to your gut, to your health, and also to the planet. And so, we touched very briefly in season 1 of Connecting the Dots on regenerative agriculture, but would love to learn a little bit more about it. On your website, Melissa and I read that you source ingredients such as buckwheat, which contribute to regenerative farming practices. So would love if you could just talk to us a little bit more about that and some of the benefits of regenerative agriculture.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So really at the root of regenerative agriculture, no pun intended, is like the primary goal of the farmer should be to grow healthy soil. Like that's like their main output, is that they're actually growing healthy soil and bringing carbon back down out of the atmosphere into the soil. And then the byproduct of that is all the, things that they're growing, which is more nutrient dense because they're growing in healthy soil. And so with buckwheat specifically, buckwheat is typically used as a cover crop. So if a farmer is planting wheat or a legume or something, or oats or quinoa, and then they might rotate in buckwheat as a cover crop in between plantings instead of leaving the fields bare, which is a really bad thing to do in regenerative farming. You want to always have your fields planted so that you're keeping the moisture in the soil and you're preventing erosion. And then oftentimes they'll till it back down into the soil to just add those nutrients back to the soil. So it's kind of, we picked buckwheat. Well, I guess we kind of happened upon buckwheat, and then we're really stoked that buckwheat is the main ingredient. We say we picked buckwheat, but I think buckwheat picked us.
Yeah.
As like our main ingredient because of its utility in regenerative farming. And now with like even looking forward in future product ideas, we always want to be picking products that where the main ingredient has utility in regenerative farming, so that we're not thinking like, let's make something out of almonds and then realizing like, oh wait, almonds are like
destroying the bee population.
Yeah. There's way too much demand for almonds, and the bees are stressed because of it, and they're a huge water drain in a place, California, that's in a drought. So like, let's not pick almonds as our main ingredient. So that's kind of how we think about future product innovation too, is like, how can we build a recipe around things that are already being grown regeneratively, rather than trying to make a recipe and then source the ingredients and maybe not be able to find them grown regeneratively.
Right. And Adam kind of touched on this earlier when he was talking about like realizing that there's a spectrum. There's organic farmers who are kind of like monocropping, and farms are all different. One of the things that has come about in recent years is there actually is a regenerative organic certification, and there are a handful of products that actually have that certification. Dr. Bronner's, which is also here in San Diego, is one of the like founding entities for that certification, and they have some products that are certified as well. But in order to get a product certified regenerative, the majority of your sources have to also be certified regenerative. And since it's such a new certification and such a rigorous certification, it's like it would be impossible for us to actually have the regenerative organic certification at this stage. Obviously, in the future, we would love for that to happen. And something that we want to do with our 1% for the Planet dollars is to support farmers in becoming, in implementing regenerative practices and becoming certified. I mean, for me, I think it's more important that farmers start tending towards that regenerative, not necessarily that like everyone has to get certified next month or whatever. It's like, no, let's start pushing our whole system in that direction. But yeah, like Adam said, buckwheat is great because it's just something that kind of inherently supports a more regenerative practice on a farm. Yeah.
I think that's so fascinating, and I did not know that about almonds. And the bees. It's kind of sad to think about, but I love how you are very intentional with those ingredients that you chose, because it seems like from start to finish everything is so intentional, and it's like by the time you're eating the bread, it's like you're almost getting that like good intention. I don't know, it's weird yogi me, but
it's
yeah, real quick
energetic.
Real quick on the bee thing. So just a fun little fact. Every single commercial bee, that's kept by a beekeeper in the entire country is brought to California for the almond pollination. So literally every bee that exists in the United States that's in a commercial beekeeping operation they're all 100% of them are brought to California for the almond pollination. And there's not enough of them anymore because they're so stressed out. So it's not just almonds, they're brought all around the country for all different things. Like we wouldn't have a lot of the food we have if it wasn't for that operation of beekeepers. And, and one of the big things is pesticides that's killing them. And, an organic farmer might be situated right beside a non-organic farmer, and then they're getting their stuff pollinated, and then the bees are still going to pollinate the non-organic stuff as well. So there's issues with the bees, and it's not just almonds that's causing that, but the fact that we have such a big demand for the bees to be brought off for the almond pollination and for other things as well that happens at different times it contributes to the issues they're having.
It makes me feel better about being allergic to almonds and not those poor bees.
You're doing your part.
Unintentionally, but it happens. So I was wondering, because you were talking about like helping farmers, like in giving back, are there any ways, even like local farmers, I don't know if they're listeners yet, but even like just people that can take kind of small steps towards like regenerative practices?
Yeah, definitely. So we currently we are supporting a farm located in San Juan Capistrano, which is about an hour north of San Diego, called the Ecology Center. And they're like the most epic regenerative farm out there. They're certified regenerative, and they have all sorts of programs to educate people, like for people to come visit the farm. They have a farm stand. They have a CSA that serves like 700 or 800 families, and 200 of those are food insecure families that they end up like they just give the food to. They have a school. It's an amazing farm, and like, I mean, it's kind of the model that you would love to see other farms be able to kind of live up to. And they have resources for training farmers, which is one thing. Like if you are actually somebody who's interested in growing food, you can look for places like the Ecology Center or Rodale Institute, which is on the East Coast, that are doing regenerative farmer trainings. Then there's also, what was that training that you did with, the name is escaping me right now.
Oh, Kiss the Ground.
Kiss the Ground, yeah.
Kiss the Ground's great. I mean, if you're talking about San Diego too, as far as like local, I'm not sure what we're considering local, but there's a farm called Wild Willow Farm that's kind of similar in its model to the Ecology Center that's in South San Diego. So it's kind of like the opposite end of the county. And they also have training for people. And I think one of the biggest things people can do actually is just like sign up for a CSA with a farm that has regenerative practices. So like JR Organics in San Diego is great, Wild Willow Farm, the Ecology Center. Those three farms kind of cover like all of San Diego with their CSA pickup. And to me, they're some of the best that all have some version of regenerative, practices. Wild Willow and the Ecology Center are both like completely regenerative. And I think JR is a little bit more of a production farm. The other two are nonprofits. JR is a little bit more production, but they also grow amazing food. We actually have their CSA, and it's really incredible. And we buy
but
it.
If you anywhere in the country, if you were to find a local farm that's working towards working towards becoming a regenerative farm and supporting them through the CSA, that's they're all over the country.
That's really helpful. And this might be a silly question, but I feel like if I have it, I'm sure our listeners might. But what separates a farm from either moving towards regenerative farming or being a regenerative farm versus one that's not? I know that you have mentioned monocropping, which, as you said, is when you just plant and grow one thing, let it chill, and then do it again. Is that the only thing that makes it not regenerative, or are there other qualifications?
Really, the baseline is organic. So just like starting there as like a very bottom line baseline, that's even the requirement for that certifications. You have to already be certified organic. But really moving away from inputs from outside the farm is really the model. Having all of your fertilizer coming from animals that you have on the farm, or if you have a neighboring farm that's keeping animals, keep having those nutrients coming from right there on the farm. And not tilling is a big one. And then having a mixture of annuals and perennials, not having like your entire farm turn over every season, but having trees and having some aspects of an orchard and animals. And so like the more diversity you have on the farm, those are the big pillars: diversity, no tilling, no synthetic fertilizers or pesticides, and just keeping a closed loop. Is there anything that I missed?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah. And it's not like, you know, a farm could easily implement one thing and then like it's like slowly they could implement like, okay, let's start keeping our own compost, and instead of buying that manure from that like CAFO, you know, feedlot over there, let's get manure from a local farm that we know is, you know, pasture raising animals. And there's steps that farms can take. It's really hard for a large farm, you know, someone like Earthbound Farm, who's growing all of the lettuce for everyone in the country, to think about like, how would we make this regenerative? Like I've talked to organic farmers up in LA that we used to get lettuce from and asked them about regenerative farming, and they kind of just laugh. They're just like, the quantity of stuff that I'm growing, like no-till farming just doesn't work on this scale. And so really the move is to move more towards like smaller local farms, you know, and eating more in season and eating more local. But that's a big shift in our food system and in our current situation in the country.
Yeah. And, you know, supporting those local regenerative farms often does mean eating seasonally, which I'm sure you all have talked about on your show. But yeah, it's actually not possible to support those farms with your dollars when you're buying things that they can't grow right now. So that's another way you can help.
Mm-hmm. Which is why the CSA is great, because you're just saying, I'm going to give you $30 a week and you're going to give me whatever's coming off the farm seasonally every week. And I'm not going to cherry pick and choose only the things I want, but I'm going to take everything that you're growing. And that's like a really fair deal for both you and the farmer.
They give you a lot of food usually.
Yeah, it's pretty much a good deal every
it's
time.
It's a good deal.
You do it. Yeah.
Sounds like a good deal.
Yeah.
And you did touch on composting a little bit, but I did want to ask you, I noticed that your bags for the bread are compostable. So I was wondering, I mean, for listeners who don't know what composting is, could you give like a little overview of that and then explain like why that is important for the environment?
Yeah. So, I mean, composting is basically when we return our waste stream, usually our food, sometimes our excrement, and sometimes our packaging. Very, very rarely our packaging, but when we take those things and return them to the soil. So there's lots of people who have backyard composting. Both Adam and I grew up with dads who garden, and composting for them was like, okay, I need to have nutrients go back into my soil every season. So I'm going to take all of the food scraps that I've generated in my house and put them in a big pile and allow the bacteria and the microbes and the worms to get in there and break it all down and turn it back into soil. And compost is like that really rich, like black, moist feeling earth that you could just like.
Yeah. Smells like the forest.
It smells like the forest.
Yeah.
Well, when it's done right, it smells like forest. If you're not doing it right, sometimes it doesn't smell like forest. But so that's, there's backyard composting, and then there's also there's commercial composting. So depending on your city, if you live in Portland or Seattle or San Francisco, there's actually green bins where you can put your food waste out and they will take it to a commercial composting facility and turn it back into soil. San Diego has one for yard waste. So
they have commercial compost now for businesses. For businesses,
yeah. And actually, some people don't know this, but often there is a municipal. There usually is a municipal compost, and sometimes you can actually go get free compost from them if you're a gardener, or you can just go and pick up a wheelbarrow full of compost, which is pretty cool. But basically, the benefit of compost, many benefits of compost, but the main one I see is that it keeps food materials out of our regular landfills. Because what happens in the landfills is you have all this organic material that gets mixed in with computers and plastic and all this stuff that prevents there from being a network of microbes and things to break it down. It just kind of sits in there. And when organic material isn't broken down by critters, by microbes, it turns into methane. And so it off gases its carbon content in the form of methane, which is like 10 times worse than carbon dioxide in terms of its greenhouse effect on the planet. So the methane contribution from landfills is actually one of the biggest concerns in the changing climate. And it's kind of crazy because it's like, well, if we just composted our food waste, it wouldn't really be a problem.
Yeah.
So
and then the water waste from those landfills also becomes really toxic and then has to
Right.
be treated, and so
yeah.
it's like a twofold issue with that organic stuff going to the landfill. And good news for California is that I believe every city in California has to have residential and commercial composting available to everyone by 2030. So I believe there's a law that went into effect. And I know they're already kind of making strides because they just brought on commercial composting. We just signed up with the local commercial composting facility for PACHA because we were using like a private service, and then the commercial facility, they have the exclusive. So once they decided to actually do it, they kind of took over all the contracts and they're doing it now. So it seems like everyone's making strides to be prepared for the 2030 regulation, which is great. I'm sure other states are also working on this. So hopefully, fingers crossed, soon enough, all over the country, everyone will have access to commercial compost or, residential compost. And because not everyone has a compost pile or even has a backyard. A lot of people live in apartment buildings and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
But if you don't have a compost pile and you want to compost, you can literally just dig a hole and bury it. Like, you don't have to be gardening to be composting. That's one thing that we always like share. And we always have our friends dump their compost in our compost pile when they don't have room for a compost pile. We're like, yeah, we'll take your compost. So you can also talk to your neighbors and, but I feel like composting is worthwhile whether you're a gardener or not, just because of all the benefits that Maddie talked about.
Yeah, composting has been something that's been on my mind lately. I live in an apartment. I don't have a yard. And I've seen a few like composting machines that kind of like speed up the composting for you to make it easier to just like put in your house plants, or we have an herb garden on our patio. So like to make it easier, just kind of put it directly back into there. So that's something that I've been like seriously considering. So I'm very glad that you've kind of pushed me to make that happen. And I've loved learning so much about PACHA and how it started and all the different benefits from, using the buckwheat to compostable packaging to using minimal ingredients to not giving us the bloating. Like you can confidently say that I am a fan. But would love for you, for our listeners, to just, if you could just summarize the health benefits of PACHA, and then I feel like we can move on to learning a little bit more about you both.
Should I just like read off the back of the package?
Yes, please.
All right. So, yeah. I mean, the main thing really is just PACHA is made with whole seeds. Like, we're not even using flour. So your body is just getting all of the nutrition that is available from those food sources. Okay, so PACHA is free of the 8 major food allergens. Here, I'll show you. This is the package.
Love it.
So it's gluten-free, it's grain-free, it's dairy-free, egg-free, nut-free, soy-free, peanut-free, GMO-free. If it's organic, it has to be GMO-free, but some people don't know that. And shellfish-free. We didn't list shellfish because we thought that was obvious, but
no oysters in our bread.
We don't put oysters there. Yeah, and it's fermented, it's soaked and sprouted like we talked about, so that you are getting the maximum nutrient load from your food. And then it's also fermented. It's a sourdough, so we didn't really talk about that, but we allow the batter to sit for 24 hours, and it's just the naturally occurring wild yeast on the bread. We don't add any kind of like baker's yeast or anything to it. But the fermentation also helps again with the digestion, like those things that are accomplishing the fermentation are assisting with the digestion before it gets to your gut. So it's super easy to digest and really nutrient rich and just good for your food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a big thing that we did talk about is like the lack of having fillers and binders and gums and whatnot, that our body really, I think a lot of those things, our body just doesn't know what to do with them yet, because we haven't been eating these things for very long. So just eating whole foods that have been around for a long time, that our body understands, this is food. Okay, I know what to do with this. You know, when I see a list of like 20 ingredients and I don't recognize half of them, I'm just kind of like, I don't really want to do like 10 hours of research to find out if any of this stuff is edible or not. But yeah.
Or if it's used in like chemicals. That's always
right. It's some byproduct. But you're like, oh, it's a byproduct of the oil and gas industry. That's weird. Why would I want to eat this?
Yeah. Oh, they manufactured this as an ant pesticide. Oh,
yeah.
It's a sweetener.
Yeah. Oh, and the other one is oils that we haven't actually talked about, but polyunsaturated fatty acids, or they call them PUFAs, which I think is kind of a funny name. We're not putting any oil on the bread. We are going to be using olive oil to kind of prevent our buns from sticking to the bun pans, but we're not using any oils that have polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are not very good for us, and traditionally they have not been eaten by humans for very long, and definitely not in large quantities, and I think a big contributor to a lot of the health issues that we're having. So without diving too deep into that, I personally don't, I avoid those, and we both do, and don't think that we should be eating vegetable oils in large quantities. So
yeah, and just like for your listeners, those are things like partially hydrogenated soybean oil, or
pretty much all seed oils,
anything that comes from a seed. Rapeseed oil, which is the same thing as canola oil,
sunflower oil, grapeseed oil, all the ones that kind of like mimic themselves as health foods. They're in the health food stores, like the sunflower oils and the safflower oils and stuff. Those are all seed oils, and they're all polyunsaturated fatty acids. So
that wouldn't be possible. Like, it wouldn't be possible for us to consume those without industrial expellers. So these are things that our bodies are like, well, this is new. Where did this come from? Yeah. And like we were talking about, most of them were byproducts of like, we ended up with all these canola seeds, and they were like, what should we do with this stuff? Like, let's turn it into food.
A lot of those oils, like they call them industrial seed oils, were used in like manufacturing equipment as lubricants before they became food. So they're like, oh, these things are great lubricants, and they're like, oh wait, we could feed this to people. Oh man, I don't understand the logic there, but yeah.
So none of that. We don't have any of that.
Yeah. Just the good stuff.
Yeah, wow, that's very helpful. And definitely with the seed oils, that's something both of us have been trying to cut out of our diets a lot.
It's hard. They're everywhere.
Very hard.
Yeah. Eating out is tough if you're trying to cut that stuff out, but eating at home's easy because you've got olive oil, avocado oil, butter. Those are all great options. And coconut oil. Maddie's allergic to coconut, but I forget about that one.
Yeah, no, I was away for 2 weeks with my family, and they're still using the conventional stuff, and I'm like, okay, I have to bring my own olive oil spray. I have to buy my own organic stuff. Like, all my food was in the corner of the kitchen. And then they're buying their own stuff. I'm like, I still don't understand. I'm like, no matter how much I say it, they'll learn for themselves one day. Okay. But I did want to switch gears. What?
I said, we know that drill.
Yeah.
Going home and bringing my own food drill.
Yes, that's very common. Did want to switch gears a little bit because I know you both have started this small business, and Adam, you started a few others, and then Kath and I, Connecting the Dots, is a small business that we're starting, and she is Kath and Carney Wellness. So I'm wondering if there's any like strategies you could talk about, or even hardships that you've had to overcome, especially with PACHA. I'm sure starting during the pandemic, there was a lot of different things that guys have had to face. So if you have any advice or experiences you'd like to share for us and our listeners.
Do you mean from for those of us who are working on our own small businesses, or in general? Yeah, I mean, certainly one of the, like Adam was talking about, one of the things that we faced during COVID and you know, as the world has gone into war and everything like that, is the supply chain issues. And I think that the things that we've been exploring lately is like how can we as a business simplify and become more immune to those supply chain changes. That's one of the big things that's been really helpful, and I think will continue to be really helpful. I'm thinking of labor, but I'm not sure that I have great advice about what to do with the labor market at this moment.
I mean, one thing that has like a learning lesson that I've had throughout all of my businesses, and I continue to learn it more and more, is just like the benefit to being scrappy and just like, you know, like as you grow your business, especially if you're a growing business and you're going from just like, you know, just me or just like me and one other person, and then you're starting to maybe hire employees and starting to get bigger and starting to like kind of like have other people buying things. It's just like really keeping that scrappy mentality, and not just because you have money in the bank doesn't mean you should go spend it, you know, like really figuring out like Maddie's really good at this, but we're really good at like just being scrappy. Like, oh, we need a conference room table. We're going to go get one from like a thrift store or find one on OfferUp. It's like when you know, remodeled our office, we just had all of us and our employees like literally remodel the office. We didn't like hire a contractor to come in and do it. And just every step of the way saving money, because undoubtedly as a growing business, you're going to come into a need for more cash. If you're like really expanding, it's like, well, if you hadn't spent it all, it would take you farther. So I think that's like a big one, to just be kind of like, even as you grow, just keep that like really scrappy mentality that you had when you were first starting out, when you didn't have money, assuming you didn't just start out with a bunch of money, because if that's the case, then that's not fair. But
not the case for us. So
not the case for most small entrepreneurs. Most people aren't loaded when they start their little business. So, and with the people thing, I mean, I think one thing that we are feeling into and realizing is, you know, we're in the hiring process right now, is just like, you know, it really is worth it to pay your people more than the going rate for a job, and just think about what you can do for your people to make it like more than just a job, and like think about the culture of the company. And I know that's kind of a buzzword, but just really be willing to like get into it with your employees and just be like, okay, like what's going on? You know, I know this and that, like really understanding where they're coming from. And also just like, yeah, I don't know, like minimum wage in California is $15 an hour, and we're paying like entry level people $18.75 to $20 right now, just because that's like, you can't afford to live in California without like that as a minimum. You know, that's just like a baseline now in California with the price of rent and everything. So I think, and not only is it helpful for your employees and probably makes for better culture and better company, but you're just going to keep people longer. They're going to be more dedicated. They're going to care more about what they're doing. So I'm a big proponent of like caring about your employees and overpaying them a little bit, and like making sure everybody feels good.
Yeah. Okay. He had a good solution for that.
It's not like I mean, it's still tough out there, but yeah.
It is.
No, it's really helpful. And my parents are small business owners, and my dad says the same thing. He's like, especially during their busy season, he's like, we gotta make sure our employees know that we're gonna take care of them. We appreciate the work that they do, and that's really good advice for us and for our listeners. We really appreciate it, and I know our listeners are gonna take that advice away, whether they're small business owners or just, working their job. They're going to know, okay, I do need to, tell my coworkers that they're doing a good job, or maybe I can be a little savvier, scrappier, and save personally. So I think your advice is tangible for a bunch of different people and situations. So we appreciate it. Unfortunately, our hour is coming to a close. I can't believe we've been chatting already for an hour. It's gone by so fast. But we like to end our interviews with some rapid fire questions. And because we didn't really get to talk too much about you both, would love to, Melissa, if you're down, to do some rapid fire with some of our questions that are personalized for Adam and Maddie.
Okay. And by rapid fire, you mean we should answer in like
a sentence? Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect.
Cool.
So you
Okay.
direct them to us like, Maddie, this is for you, Adam, this is for you.
Yep.
Sweet.
We got you. Okay, Maddie, you're up first. So as a fellow woman in business, can you share one piece of advice for women who are trying to get their brands and businesses out there?
Your voice is just as, if not more important than, your male peers. Yep. Don't be afraid to speak up.
Adam, so I know we've been talking about organic farming. Do you have, besides buckwheat and the PACHA bread, do you have any other favorite things that you'd like to grow? Maybe like one or two things.
Well, right now we got some awesome tomatoes coming out of the garden. So I love tomatoes, and we've had a lot of luck with sweet potatoes lately in the past couple of years, growing sweet potatoes, and they're delicious. And we get like a 40-pound bounty. So I'm going to say tomatoes and sweet potatoes.
And sorry, follow up rapid fire. Do you do that in your backyard or?
Well, in every square inch of plantable area in every house we've ever lived in. So kind of just like, if there's grass, it's going to turn into garden.
Yep, we just tore up the grass at our current house. So. Garden to come.
Maddie, we saw that you have a PhD in oceanography, which is so cool. What made you interested in oceanography?
Well, I touched on it a little bit. I studied engineering at Notre Dame and realized that I didn't want to design highway overpasses. And so I started looking at what else I might be able to do in the realm of civil engineering, which is anything that's like touches the public. And so understanding hurricanes and weather patterns and that kind of thing is in that realm. And I was like, oh, I can go study the ocean? Yeah, I'm going to do that. You guys can stay here and design highway overpasses. I'm going to go to California and study the ocean.
I love it.
That's so funny. So Adam, we had kind of touched on acro yoga earlier. Could you just explain to listeners what acro yoga is and maybe like how it had impacted your life?
Yeah, sure. Acro yoga is kind of just a cute name for partner acrobatics. It's very more approachable for people that are scared of doing acrobatics. It's really balancing people on top of people. So you might see people doing it in L basing, which is laying on your back and your feet in the air, and there's a flyer, the person in the air, and a base, the person on the ground, and the flyer is kind of like flying around on the person's feet and hands. And then standing acrobatics, which is more familiar for people that have gone to circus shows and seen Cirque du Soleil, people balancing each other, kind of just holding each other on their hands and kind of above their head. So acro yoga is just like a communal version of like a kind of like DIY, like hobbyist kind of version of just like professional acrobatics, which is, they're very similar. So, and I don't remember the rest of the question.
Maybe how it impacted your life, like
Oh, wow.
one thing you might have done to like benefit you.
Oh, wow. I mean, like my whole community and life is based around the acro yoga community in San Diego. So I literally probably wouldn't have started. I definitely would not have started Boochcraft or PACHA if it wasn't for acro yoga. I met my business partners in those realms through this community. And I wouldn't know Maddie. I mean, my whole life would be completely different. So
yeah, I feel like community is one of the most underrated things about yoga, and that was my top thing too when I started teaching yoga. It was the community aspect.
Yeah.
Yep.
And acro yoga is like, you actually have to like physically pick people up and hold them in the air. So it's like the yoga community on steroids, because you like really need that trust and that like you actually have to talk to people. You can't just go to yoga class and be on your mat and leave. Like in order to balance people in the air, you have to speak with them. So it's it kind of forces that community aspect, which is cool.
Maddie, how has it impacted you?
I mean, I would say similar. Yeah, my life has completely shifted over the course of the 10 years that I've been in here, and one of the big shifts was happening upon the acro yoga community. And yeah, just realizing that there was a faction of society, a faction of people that were kind of just willing to like do the thing that made them really happy. And that's a lot of the people that I meet in the acro yoga community are kind of like kicking convention to the wind and saying like, I think I'm gonna try my life in a different way. And I think that's something that acro yoga started pushing me towards. Who knows? I mean, like, I don't know that I would have left science if I hadn't found the acro yoga community that I did. So
love that.
That's wild. Melissa, do you want to move into our final rapid fires?
Yeah, so there's 3 questions we ask everyone end of each episode. So what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone starting their health journey today? Maddie, maybe if you want to go first.
Yeah, I would say start with the easy stuff. Find the 1 or 2 or 3 small things that you can do that you can commit to, and just make those changes, make them consistently. Fad diets, cleanses, like all that stuff that you can do maybe for a week is not going to change your life in the way that just something simple. So yeah, that's where I would start.
Adam, what is one piece of advice you'd give someone starting their health journey today?
I mean, that's kind of what I would have said, is just like make some small incremental changes. I mean, I think like the really clear one to me, I was actually just talking about this, is just first cut out like all the processed foods and the fast food and the PUFAs and the like, there's some really obvious stuff that just like, you know, if you can, like as much as possible, cut it out. Obviously people, it's hard to just go cold turkey on some stuff if you've been eating it your whole life. But that's like the first step, because there's no point in doing all these other things if you haven't cut that stuff out. And then just really just start eating a whole foods diet and eating whole unprocessed foods as much as possible. I think there's all these fad diets like she talked about, and none of that matters if you're not already eating a whole foods diet. So that's a really good place to start.
Absolutely.
So what do you think the future of health looks like?
I don't know.
Mhm.
And that's in some ways really beautiful. But I do really think that it's going to depend. What the future of health looks like is going to depend on what we're able to shift in our food system. Like, even if tomorrow everyone were to say, I'm going to start eating all organic and regenerative, wouldn't work because there wouldn't be enough organic regenerative food to feed the people who want it. So yeah, the future of health for the is not just for individuals, it's for the whole planet, if that's the future we want to live into.
What do you think?
You know, in my like best possible outcome is that we make a total like global shift in our consciousness and we start caring about the planet, which is really our health is no different than the health of the planet. It's like inside, outside, both the same. And then another thing that I do see is that there is not just with health, but with like technology and everything, there's just seems to be a mass of people that are being drawn towards technology and easy solutions and pills and anti-aging technologies and kind of this kind of like technological aspect of health. And then there's people that are drawn to like ancestral, like back to the old ways and natural living and growing food. And maybe we will split into like kind of divergent populations and there will be two things going on. I'm not exactly sure how we would share the planet though, because if this conglomerate over here is not taking care of the planet, that would affect everybody. So my hope for society and for the world is that we shift and we just start caring about the planet that we live on. And I think that'll make a monumental shift in people's health.
First step, you can start buying your bread.
Yeah.
Yeah, start with buying PACHA bread, and then we'll go from there.
We've so enjoyed this conversation, and we want our listeners to be able to connect with you, and if it resonates with them, definitely support PACHA. So can you please tell our listeners how they can connect with you or where they can follow you on social media?
Yeah, I'm not a big user of social media, but if you really want to follow my Instagram account, you can follow at Maddie Learns to Fly. And there's some acro yoga stuff on there. There's some chickens doing acro on there.
Wow.
Old content, but good.
Definitely gotta check that out.
Yeah, and you can also message me on Instagram as well. And if you want to connect via email, you can email info@livepacha.com or my name maddie.hamann@livepacha.com.
Yeah, and the PACHA website is livepacha.com, and the Facebook is Live PACHA Official, and the Instagram is Live PACHA.
I can send those via
that can all be
writing to you,
yeah.
And you can include them in the show notes or whatever.
Yeah. And the info at Live PACHA also comes to me, so I'll see those emails, and I'm also on social media, just my first and last name, Adam.Hiner. And do we have a discount code that we're going to send out for listeners?
Yes.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll get you guys a discount code that you can put out into the show notes, or I'm not sure how you do that, but
thanks. Yeah, we can also do like an Instagram live or something fun to announce it and promote it. That would be great.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you both so much for being guests and chatting with us about you and your mission and your brand. I can't wait to try PACHA bread. I'm stoked.
And don't forget to toast it.
Toast it.
Yeah.
Lots of butter.
Okay, cool.
We're not vegan.
Neither are we. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Connecting the Dots. If there was something that resonated with you, or you simply enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, leave a 5-star rating and written review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. so you can be the first to know when a new episode is released. And if you'd like to further support us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Instagram at connectingthedots.podcast on both platforms. We're also on TikTok at Connecting the Dots Podcast.
We have intentionally curated resource guides that go with every episode to give you the tools, resources, and information you need to make tangible changes at home. You can purchase these guides at kathleencarney.com/resources. If you would like to work with me directly, you can also go to kathleencarney.com/services and book a free discovery call to decide which service is right for you. Make sure you follow me at Kathleen Carney Wellness on Instagram and TikTok.
And I'm Melissa Chamis on Instagram and The Lazy Yogi separated by underscores on TikTok. And we'll link all this information in the show notes to make it easier for you.
We appreciate your continued support and look forward to hanging with you next week.